that we'll just admit as well still. And yeah, so for this webinar this week, I will just do, or this month, I will just start with our karakia, and then go to the agenda and some housekeeping, and then we'll be away. So te mata tātou whaia, te mataranga, kia marama, kia tupu, kia tiaki ngā whenua, ngā moana, ngā arawai. Kia whaitaki ngā mahi katoa, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou, toi te kupu, toi te mana, toitū te whenua, homie, huie, tai kie. And that's just to say we pursue knowledge for understanding, developing and caring for the lands, the bodies of water and waterways. We seek purpose in all that we do. Let us show respect for each other, hold fast to our language, hold fast to our spiritual strength, sustain the land, gather and go forward together. Welcome everybody. So for the agenda today, as I said before, karakia, housekeeping, Toitū Te Whenua LINZ news, so we'll run through some updates from addressing suburbs and localities, historic property and sales data, and connected property data, with that last one having a outside spin on it as well, with Emma Duncan from Environment Southland doing a shared presentation there of a case study that came up recently. And then we will hear from Wellington City Council. Denise Beazley, the Program Director for the Wellington Underground Asset Map project, will give us a demo of the early access version of their beta pilot platform that went live last month. And then to finish up, we will have another demo of another in prototype digital visualization tool for survey plans that's being developed as part of the Modernising Landonline project. And Nick Stillwell, our consulting surveyor in that project, will be presenting that. So just housekeeping, audience, your cameras and microphones are all enabled in that they're able to be turned on and off. They're not locked down. So, and on that note, we do welcome spoken and written questions. So there'll be time after each of those segments for question Q&A. So you can use the raise hand button to indicate that you'd like to ask a spoken question, or you can pop a question in the chat at any time, and we'll come to it for that Q&A section. And just to note that the webinar is being recorded and it will be shared afterwards as well. All good. So the LINZ news and updates section, to start off with, we will have Trent Gulliver, our Principal Geospatial Specialist and leader of our data value stream here at LINZ, giving those updates on addressing and then suburbs and localities. Off you go, Trent.
Lovely, thank you very much there, Ben, and kia ora everybody. As Ben mentioned, I'm Trent Gulliver, Principal Geospatial Specialist for the data value stream here at Toitū Te Whenua Land Information New Zealand. And yeah, I'm very pleased to be able to provide you with updates on addressing and also NZ suburbs and localities. A couple of little stats to kick things off here. So over the past year, the property squad, those responsible for integrating addresses into the system here at Toitū Te Whenua, have input 75,000 updates in the order of over the last 12-month period. And so that contributes to our official data set, NZ addresses, and that's in the order of around about 2.3 million property addresses now. So that's yeah, it's quite an impressive thing, and a lot of addresses to handle. And hats off. I'm getting applause here, but I'm guilty. It's the team, all the hard work there, and also with the local councils, those responsible for allocating addresses and providing those address updates to us. So we're just really pleased to be part of the process. So thank you very much to you all, and yeah, thumbs up back to you. All righty, I think we can go to the next slide there, Ben. Thank you very much. You might recall that NZ addresses went live back in 2021, and it sort of followed on from a piece of work to validate, or to identify and validate missing addresses. And we referred to that work as the Comprehensive Addressing Project. And it basically entailed comparing address data held by the local councils, by the TAs, with the data that we hold. Theoretically, there should be a nice one-to-one match, but the reality is that there has been a gap for many reasons that has grown over the years. And so through that validation process, we were able to identify that the gap was around 130,000 addresses. So they were confirmed and then contributed to NZ addresses when it was published. And so that was a major step into a better space. So we're very proud of that work, but it wasn't job done. There's always more. As part of that process, we were also able to compare the data that we hold with data from other sources. And so it's sources that are not official. So not something we could just say, oh, that's a missing address and we should put that into the system and publish it. We need to make sure it went through a considered process. So we were able to confirm that there was a number of addresses that seemed like an address. It seemed valid, had all the key components of an address. There wasn't one in the system that we have. And so we thought, yep, it'd be great to circle back on this and connect with the responsible local councils to confirm those addresses and see if we can have them allocated and then integrated into the system and published for reuse by anyone. So that's a piece of work that we've got underway at the moment. And so at this point in time, we've got confirmations back from 16 of the 67 TAs, and we've updated NZ addresses with 109 extra additional addresses, which I think it seems like a small contribution compared to the overall project. It's nonetheless, any additional address that we should have in the system, it's a great thing. That number is likely to increase significantly as we connect with the larger TAs, such as Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and beyond. We've got Nahi Marks leading that work, and which is fantastic because Nahi was in it from day one with the comprehensive addressing work. Nahi is very passionate about improving the system, data improvement, and so some of you on the call now may have heard from Nahi in relation to this work that we've got underway. If you haven't already, then yeah, in the not too distant future, Nahi will be reaching out to you to discuss the intelligence that we've got around some possible missing addresses. So yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, Ben, I think that's okay to move on there. In terms of questions, sorry, Ben, I probably apologies if I missed something. Should I pause there for any questions, or should I continue on with NZ suburbs and localities?
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat, but we can just offer the chance quickly if there is anyone willing or have a question. But if not, we'll just carry on. And you can always pop a question in the chat later if it comes to you.
Sure,
I think carry on, Trent.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so from one exciting space into another exciting space, both exciting, they're both connected, because suburbs and localities, the key component of an address to help ensure that address is unique at a national scale. So Toitū Te Whenua, we published NZ Suburbs and Localities on the LINZ data service back in June last year. The data set is an administrative record that shows and maintains boundaries and names for urban areas, which are the suburbs, and rural areas, the localities. It's for location and addressing purposes. We took that responsibility on following a transition from the amazing people at Fire and Emergency New Zealand. Okay, so your next slide, please, Ben. The maintenance of NZ suburbs and localities is supported by principles, requirements, and rules, and a process for handling requests for change. So we've got a suite of documents. Next slide, please. And this is a diagram of the change request process. I won't go through it in detail. Hopefully it's large enough and clear enough for you to see on your screens. A couple key things to note in the process is that once we receive a request for a change, we take it through a process where a key early part of that process is to engage and consult with the NZGB and with responsible TAs. And so it's a vital part of the process because there's a particular responsibilities, statutory responsibilities that sort of reside with the NZGB and also TAs, and that's something we're very mindful of and want to respect going forward. And it feeds in vital intelligence again, and it's a two-way conversation to be able to work on the data set for the greater good and with a common understanding. So a couple other things to note there in that diagram is that the requests are considered under two types, and that's a minor or major. I'll come back to that a little bit later in the presentation, not too much later. The other thing to note is that there's a review panel involved, and that review panel again has a vital role to play in the maintenance of NZ suburbs and localities. Next slide, please, Ben. Alrighty, speaking of the review panel, so it comprises great people from the NZGB, Fire and Emergency New Zealand, Local Government New Zealand, NZ Post, Stats NZ, and of course ourselves at Toitū Te Whenua. Okay, I think you can go on to the next slide there, Ben. Okay, minor change requests. So a minor change request is something that is a simple request, and it's something that complies quite clearly with our rules, our requirements, and the principles, the documentation that I was referring to earlier. So there's when it comes to minor change requests, since taking on NZ suburbs and localities, we have approved 6 such requests, just to give you an idea of the sort of scale or the volume of things at the moment. So over the past year, there's been 6 minor change requests. An example of a request, a minor change request, is realigning a boundary to match a revised property boundary. Next slide, please, Ben. Okay, major change request. This is where a bit more work is required. And so over the last year, we have received and worked through 5 major change requests, and we've accepted those, and they've gone through and the data set has been updated. A major change request is one where there's a significant change which does not meet all of the principles, requirements, or rules, or which may be considered contentious. So that's what sort of slips it into that space. All major change requests go through the process that was described a little bit earlier in that diagram and are ultimately considered by the NZ Suburbs and Localities Change Request Review Panel. That change request review panel, our very first meeting was in June, and we're scheduled to meet 3 times per calendar year on an ongoing basis now. Thank you, Ben. So finally, we have developed an app to support the likes of councils, Fire and Emergency New Zealand, New Zealand Post, those sort of, I guess, organisations that have a key sort of interest in suburbs and localities and work closely in that space. And it's to help make or streamline the process for making a request for change online, and information on accessing this tool is available in the change request document on the LINZ website, and we're currently preparing an article to raise awareness of the tool and the process and the good work that is happening in this space generally. Right, that's all from me, Ben. Back to you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Trent. I'm just wondering, are you able to, in your own time afterwards, pop a link to the change request form or that website page you mentioned into the chat for people, and we can add it to the PowerPoint.
Certainly, I can do that.
Shared afterwards.
Good. We'll do
as well. And then otherwise, just a question from me: like, is that that change request form, is that available for any member of the public to submit a request on, or is it
no, it's not. It's by request. And so we're looking to, I guess, keep things considered and channeled through the right sort of in the right way, I suppose. We're mindful that there's people like organisations like councils, Environment Emergency New Zealand, NZ Post has discussed just moments ago, that this will really help them. The idea is to be, I guess, customer centric here, to help them to streamline things. It will also help things at our end when it comes to processing things, and also demonstrating and discussing any requests that we're considering as part of the panel. So it's not open to everybody. So a request needs to be made before it can be granted, and then we go from there. And there's supporting information as well in terms of using the tool. There's a little video clip on it, and also there's always going to be support from us on use of the tool. But to answer your question more directly, no, it's not available to everybody, so it's on request.
Terrific. And a question's just popped up in the chat. Is there any consideration being given to aligning suburb boundaries with SA2 boundaries?
We've got a backlog of a lot of things that we will work through eventually to continue to improve the data set, and so that's something that we will look to work through and consider as well. There's at the moment, where it's kind of just got our view, we've got this data, we've made some changes hopefully to make it more usable, and also we look to maintain things going forward. But there's good things that we'll be looking at over time. As soon as we have the capacity to do so, we will be looking at things more holistically to improve the data set.
That's great. Thanks, Trent. Oh, and the chat's just kicked off a bit. It might be a bit slow after there's been some Teams issues today, so maybe it's just catching up sporadically, but there's a few more things, a bit of chat in the chat. And Susan's asked, what happens when a member of the public makes a request to change a suburb?
Yes, and so a member of the public, anyone. So that's a good question to ask, Susan. Thank you for asking that. And so I might have headed everybody into the wrong sort of space in terms of using the tool, the app. So whilst that's not intended to be open for everybody, anybody can make a request. And so there we can be emailed a request, or again, that public request might be channeled through a responsible TA as well. So ultimately, we have been receiving requests from the general public via email and working through those, and a number of those changes that we have implemented with those change proposals were initiated by members of the public, and we made sure that we of course connected in with all the good people, with NZGB, with the TA, and also through Fire and Emergency and NZ Post to make sure that we get things right. And so so anyone can make a change request or a request for change. Did I answer that question? I didn't see the whole question, sorry, from Susan.
I think you've answered it. Susan can sing out if otherwise. Please do. But otherwise, there was just one more question from Jenny Harris. Good to hear. Is anything being done to incentivise or otherwise councils to make addresses and suburbs improvement a priority? Hard question.
It's a great question, and we're all for it. And just being connected, collaborating. definitely up for it as we best can be, given the circumstances. So the team do a great job at connecting at quite a one-on-one sort of level with staff through all of the 67 TAs, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, we do desire to have a more holistic sort of approach to these things, and there's steps being made, I suppose. So, but it's not, there's still more work to be done. We really do appreciate that. An example of that is water addresses, and so we're connected with the Marlborough District Council in that space, and we're just looking to work through that. There's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of challenges, but it's all part of it. We're definitely up for it, and we keep chipping away as best we can for now, given the environment.
Yeah. Thanks, Trent. And otherwise, I see Carl Stats came back with a rejoinder about the SA2 question. They have a different purpose, and that's probably maybe the takeaway there is that perhaps there's some public information comms that could be done by somebody about the differences between those two things and the different applications, different data sets or classifications. Another big problem. So I think if the question seems to have died down, so we'll move on from addressing and suburbs and localities. Thank you again, Trent, for presenting those and answering the questions. And the next item is just a very quick update from myself that I will talk to. So historic property and sales data. You may, if you are involved with a council, you may be aware that we have data sharing agreements in place currently to share current DVR information, district valuation role data with LINZ, and that powers our notice of change service through Landonline, where councils in return are automatically notified when there's a change of ownership processed by a solicitor on a title in our Landonline system. And it's come to our attention with some feedback from a couple of other agencies across central government that it would be really helpful to have historic data set available for more in-depth investigative like time series analysis and policy formation. So on that note, we have written to all 67 local councils about a month ago requesting a minor variation to those existing DSAs so that QV, who holds a fair chunk, if not all, of that historic data that's available in a digitized form, will be able to provide that data for us on those councils' behalves. And currently, we've got over a 60% agreement rate, and we're following up with other councils who we've had a couple of questions come back, and otherwise just chasing up to get a response or make reconnect with some councils to get the rest over the line. So that's a work in progress, and should result in, or will result in, more data being made available through the NZ Properties DVR data restricted layers for public sector use. And so if there's no questions on that, I will introduce Greg and Emma Duncan. So Greg is one of our principal geospatial specialists here at LINZ and in our property data squad, and will be well known to a few of you, I suspect. And Emma Duncan is a GIS analyst at Environment Southland. Their three-person team provides GIS services to their organisation, to the public, and to emergency management Southland. They are regular consumers of LINZ data, such as parcels and titles, but are really interested in making better use of those NZ property layers, like the NZ property hybrid layer, for example, and are exploring how they can make use of those as something that makes better sense to the public, and based as they are around ratings units and those sort of public perceptions of property, or what a property is. So with that, I will hand over to Greg and Emma.
Emma first, I think.
Okay, so
Struggling to hear you, Emma.
Might just be a...
I did hear Emma for a moment.
how's that?
Yes,
That's
better.
much better.
Good.
Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. As Ben alluded to, I'm joining here as a consumer of the LINZ data. Primarily, my end goal is to have a property data set which I can share in-house, which just updates automatically in the background without any work from myself. As a regional council, we don't create properties, so we have to get the spatial data from somewhere else. We have a rating database, which is purely textual, and previously our TAs have sent us monthly spreadsheets with such data. So I've started looking at recreating our process and using the LINZ property data, but once I started that, I sort of found a few issues with that data. On the plus side, we got a 90% match, which was really great. But then we had to look at why we weren't getting matches. So then I started talking to Greg at LINZ with a few specific cases. So, ready to go on, Greg? The first one was I bought the property data in-house based on a textual filter, which was the TA is 73 or 74 or 75. And on the left, you'll see the extent covered all of New Zealand. So I thought, what's going on here? Because I expected it to just be Southland. So I started looking at those properties that were outside of Southland to see what the issue was. That's me for that. One of the ones I found was a property that should have been in Invercargill, but yet in the property layer from LINZ, it was in Taupō. On further investigation, we discovered a typo in the title number, which led me to ask Greg why that was. If Invercargill holds the correct title number, why does LINZ hold the incorrect title number? And what's the process to get that fixed?
So I think I'd take that over there.
Yeah, I believe so.
So in this case, Emma was right. So what's happened here is that the data has come through to us from the TA with an incorrect title number in it, and it was just a typo. And these things are common. It happens all the time in data that has been manually entered, I guess. So in our system, we're able to change that. So what we've done is we've taken away the incorrect title, which was in Taupō, and linked it to the correct one. And we can do that based on a number of different things. That primarily, when we do this manually, the one we look at is the legal description, and you can see now that the two legal descriptions of these things match. So you've got the legal description of the rating unit says Lot 5, DP 581120. The legal description of the title says that it is Lot 5, DP 581120. We also check that it's in the right region of the country when this happens. So without us actually knowing about this, if it comes in the incoming data, we don't know, so we don't immediately change it. And also these ones have to be done manually because it's just a typo. Nevertheless, there are other issues in the data that we can fix on the incoming data in an automated way. So we don't have to do everything manually, but in this case, it was a manual fix. So essentially what we've done is connected the correct title to the correct rating unit. Back over to Emma.
Okay, so another case, this one was in Southland, but as you see on the left, figure 6, the property looked like that, a few little river lines. So LINZ had connected that to 2 titles, which we can see there. And when I went to the Southland District Council mapping viewer, they had connected it to 3 titles and it looked more like figure 7. So again, I went back to find out why this may have happened. Oh, right, I'm continuing this. So Greg actually managed to find 6 titles related to that property and connected them all to create that property in the end.
Yeah, so again, we did this by legal descriptions and manually looked at it. So there's all the titles that were
Oh, you just flick slides.
connected. Sorry. Go back. Here we are. You right there, Emma?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
yep.
Sorry, do you want to go, Emma?
Yep, sure. Okay, so this was another property. The property layer from LINZ was displaying only the parent property, yet I wanted to display 2 rating units, A and B. One was rateable and one was non-rateable. So again, I went back to them to ask why this is happening.
Yeah. So so the next thing is I have a look at this in our system, and one of the things that we have is, of course, the data doesn't get published in our unit of property layer unless it has a spatial footprint, and that meant that there were actually 3 rating units here, but 2 of them were what we call child properties, and they didn't have titles attached to them, and there was a single title instead attached to the parent. So what you can see here in our system is what the parent property looked like. The child properties have question marks on them because we don't know where in the country those are, but the parent property had a title. That's a result of the way councils structure their data. It's not incorrect. It is correct. It's just that the way we want to publish our published data is a little different, because we have this concept of parent and child, whereas councils use the concept of apportionment codes. So what we actually want to do in this case is attach the title to the child properties, not to the parent, and then we can actually publish all 3 rating units. One would be obviously the parent, which has no titles, but it would come through as a parent property in our parent properties list. The other 2 would be child properties that have the titles attached. So if we look at how we resolve that, so we know what causes this. It's the real reason for it is because councils structure their data differently. But the other thing to say here is that we actually don't have access in LINZ to the apportionment codes that TAs use, and people often ask us why we don't use those codes to filter things out or to structure things properly, and it's because our current agreements with councils don't include those apportionment codes. So we have to do properties like this in other ways. Some of this work can be automated though, so it's not fully manual. We are able to identify some of these. This one didn't get picked up by the automated process, so we had to do it manually, I guess. So now what we've done here, this is a view of what one of the child properties looks like. And as you can see, the rating unit and the title, we look at one property at a time. So that essentially means that the rating unit and the title here are connected to each other. And so now that property is correctly structured. I did the same for the other one as well. So you just note that it has a parent property, and the parent property was the previous one. So that's that example. I guess in a bit of a summary then, just answering Emma's original question, who do you go to when there's a problem? So I guess there are two sources to go to really, but it depends on what the problem is. Rating units, the authoritative source for rating units is the territorial authorities themselves. So they hold that data, they are the owners of that data, and they can fix the data at source. If we're talking about the published data, though, that we publish on the LINZ data service, we link to the titles directly in Landonline in our property data. So the authoritative source for the link to the titles is LINZ. So you can contact us if you spot a problem. We can fix the link between the property and the title and publish a new link. But the original source of the data, which came from the TA will need to update their data as well. So essentially it's both, but we can certainly fix it in the published data. So if you find an issue like that, please send us an email, properties@linz.govt.nz. And that's it from us. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Greg and Emma. That was fantastic. To see some real life examples of where our CPDMS, Connected Property Data Management System, is helping to create, fix up some connections between the different aspects of property. And I'll just give time. There are no questions in the chat, but we'll give an, oh, one's just popped up. We're looking at also updating a properties data input process. Do you have any sense of how many issues like this there might be? Might be a question for Greg.
Yes, I do. In fact, we get reports that our system generates that tell us how many issues there are per council. A lot of those issues are probably not very sanitized. They're probably not the sort of thing that individual councils want to look at the entire report. You'd certainly need to filter it. We are looking at a council feedback process, but it's a difficult thing to build. So we probably don't want to send councils the whole report unless you want it, unless you ask for it. But there are councils that have relatively minor numbers of them, and there are some councils that have thousands, and it will depend, largely on, I guess how the data is updated, whether it's done by the council or the VSP, etc., etc. So I guess I have an answer for you per council, but not nationally. Thanks.
Very
Any
good.
other questions?
None in the chat. And just looking at time, how often is the hybrid layer updated? Very last one, quickly before we move on to Denise and Wellington City Council.
No problems. Thanks, Matt. And how often is it updated? It's actually updated weekly. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you, Greg. And with that, we will move to our next item on the agenda, which is Wellington Underground Asset Register. And presenting, we have Denise Beazley, Program Director at the Council, at the project. She has worked across the corporate sector, central and local government in New Zealand, and the UK, specialising in strategy, risk, change management, and market communications. Denise was previously Network Activity Planning Manager for Wellington City Council, and was responsible for producing Wellington's Development Response Plan. And Denise, how are you doing?
All good. Can you see my screen?
Can see your screen, can hear you. Great.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks everyone for your time this afternoon. This is an update on what we're actually developing and what it will mean for New Zealand, and why we're taking the approach that we are. So we are in essence creating an updatable and trusted view of what's where under the ground, so that subsurface work can be undertaken safely and efficiently. The beta platform, which is being funded by central government funding through DIA, was launched in July, and we will have approximately a 12-month period of testing the system, and we're working on how would it get rolled out across New Zealand. So in other words, there would be one online map-based library for storing and sharing and accessing information on where underground utilities and other contextual information is. So I'm hoping that my No, it's not letting me. I'll stop sharing and then try that again. So effectively, we are, the register is, here we go. So effectively, just looking at, if you think about this from a location perspective, if you look at those pictures, the two on the left, the only thing that's in common with both is the building, which is as you come out of the terrace tunnel, this building, this is Willis Street. So you can see the tram tracks are here in 1920. In 2024, the tram tracks aren't there, but you know what? They're still there. They're just under the ground. They were never taken away. And you'll notice that the curb lines have changed. So if assets under the ground, so the lifelines, utilities, water, electricity, and so forth are underground, how we've referenced, though, where exactly they are, where we would have referenced from the curb line or from a particular building in the past, is no longer relevant if you look at today, because the landscape above ground has changed, and we wonder what it will look like in another 100 years' time. So how do we create a trustworthy system in perpetuity?
You're on mute, Denise, if you're trying to speak.
Right, sorry about that. So effectively, yeah, when you go into the system, what you can see, this is the road in Miramar, right? So there was some work done a couple of months ago. What the new platform will enable you to do is you will be able to record where assets are and where they're not. So if I go to this next...
We're still seeing the Willis Street example.
Yeah.
Are you? Sorry, hang on. Technology is not being my friend today. So let's try that again. Let's go into the system. That might be easier. So it is just not playing nicely. Do apologize for this.
You're all right. Just yep,
yeah. Okay. All right. So can you now see my screen, and you should be able to see the actual new platform?
We can see the Underground Asset Register website.
Okay, so if I go into the new system, this is a beta platform. It's being rolled out in Wellington so that we can essentially test and trial what works for the sector in a way that's managed and small scale, because the last thing we want to do is actually work through the, I'll call it the gremlins on a national scale. It just wouldn't be very sensible. So if I log into the system, I can change the actual view that I see. I can zoom in on a part of the city where I want to know what's where. I can, if I draw an area of interest, so say I'm interested in, let's zoom out again. Don't want that. So I can actually look at, there's the cake tin, and you can see, here we go. So here's Wellington train station. So I can draw an area of interest, and you will be able to draw different shapes going forward. So if I draw an area of interest, what I get are what assets, or where the records of where those assets are underground for a particular location. So I can see orange is electricity. Now that's at what's called security level 1. So I can only see the information about those assets when I draw an area of interest, and when I've zoomed in, there is gas along this corridor. So that's PowerCo. I can see there's potable water, and if I click on if I go into further detail, I can actually click on that, and that will tell me, let's try this one here. I can see that it's a Wellington electricity asset. I can see that that asset is in service, and I know who to contact. So there will be more information added over the coming months. And at the moment we have in the system water, electricity, chorus, vital, gas, and who've I missed, and all 3 waters data. So we are progressively adding data from the records of each utility. What's important to note here is that it is a mirror record of what is in the actual utility system. It is not the source of truth. It is a federated environment, and the ownership and the stewardship of the data sits with each utility, and we do regular updates. Some asset owners are at a point where their system data can be API'd into the system, and some it is a far more rudimentary process that we're working through. Any questions before I go on?
There are a couple in the chat. Yeah, just thanks, Denise, for taking a pause. So does this replace before you dig?
I think the answer to that question is that there will be, in our view, there is before you dig, and there are other services as well. There will be an opportunity, and we think that there is a place for all market providers. So there are systems like Reveal, who provide a map-based information platform for survey information that they do. So, but this will become the source of where assets are, and it will be available 24/7 on a cost recovery basis only. So if you are doing work in the road corridor or planning a project, this is the system that you will use, not in beta platform, but beyond then, for obtaining the latest information. So we still think there is a place for Before You Dig and Reveal and all of those other parties. Our job as the RCA or the regulator in the process is to provide a system by which information about what is in the corridor can be shared and accessed. Does that answer your question?
I think so, and you've hinted at or started answering the next question too. How do you let the utility owner know about someone digging near their high risk or critical infrastructure?
So that is a new feature that will be added over the coming months. So one of the things we've done is work with utilities and contractors and locators and surveyors and so forth, and said, what do you want the system to do? And that is what we are building. Our view could have been, we could have waited another 12 months, year or 2 years or whatever to build all the functionality in, but actually we would rather release something that was fairly rudimentary, let this infrastructure sector play with it and use it, and have a voice in how they want it developed. And that's the approach that we've taken. We see that as an RCA, our role is to be the enabler, not the developer of what it should or shouldn't do. The sector it's for the sector, by the sector. That's our approach.
Nice. And how do you handle where asset owners know they have an asset somewhere but aren't 100% sure of its location?
Oh, wow.
Must be quite common, I think.
Yeah, it is very, very common. So particularly in the light of telecommunications, some of the telecommunications sector, they can tell you what side of the road that their asset is, fingers crossed, but that's about as far as they can get with confirming that detail. So I'm going to stop sharing this at the moment. Oh no, actually I won't. I'll go to, you can create your own records, right? And you will be able to do this on your mobile, just not until mid-September, beginning early September. At the moment you can do it on a desktop, but you can't do it in a very user-friendly way on mobile. So you will be able to go into, imagine you're out in the field, you're a contractor, and you go, gee whiz, that's 6 meters away from where I thought it was, or there's 3 cables here, not the one that's on the plans that I've got. You will be able to select, set up a new record. So if you are in the field, if you GP Friel or Downer or whatever, you will be able to add a record. You will be able to select what type it was. It might be something that's wrongly recorded. It might be unidentified. It might be so manky and dishevelled after 100+ years in the ground, you have no idea what it is. You sort of, but you can make a guess, or you might just simply want to say, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to put it down as a site observation and we are going to require contractors to do this. It is already covered under the National Code of Practice. So it says the date of when I was, it's got the date of when I'm out in the field. And then I'm going to select world imagery, and then I'm going to zoom in, and then I will be able to say, that's where I found it. I can say what type of utility it was if I want to, if I know. So it might be that I just don't know what it was. You can give the record a name. So we can call it unknown. We might be able to put unknown asset. Yep. Asset, and then you can put something about it. So you can put things like 50 millimeters diameter. You could put what depth it was at. You could put what it was made of. Anything that would help the next person who's coming in there to dig. Then it pre-populates your details. So this is where the new functionality, which is coming in September, will be better, because if you've already logged in, why do you have to put your details in again, is what I said to the development team. It already knows it's you. The other thing you can do is you can, while you're out on site, you can take a photo. You can hopefully geo-reference your photo if you're not in an urban canyon. You can upload, and we want the contractors to upload those photos in the file into the system. And then you create. Now, I'm not going to create now, but what it would do is that's how the system works, and you can do that while you're in the field. That will, over the next 12 months, give the utility an opportunity to then, if you've identified that, say it's an electricity asset, it will send an alert to Wellington Electricity to say, we found something here and your records showed it was there. It is the responsibility of the utility to verify that data, and that is where we've been talking to surveyors and locators and so forth. It is not the responsibility, the validation process is not the responsibility of the contractor. Their job is to say, I had the ground open and I found something. And actually I worked for 100 meters down that corridor, and your asset was showing actually that all the way along there it was at this spot. So you could put a series of pins along that corridor. So what that does, and which no other system offers, is it offers a feedback loop for the sector. A contractor can also say, actually, your plan said it was here and that's where we found it. So it gives the GIS team an opportunity in that utility to actually confirm that the asset was where their record showed it was. Do we think this is going to make the system, the purpose of doing this is to improve the ability of the trustworthiness and the accuracy of records? Do we think it's going to happen overnight? No, I see this as being a long-term program of improvement. So those are the key features of this system are you can create your own area of record and you can save it if you're working in a particular area. You will in the future be able to do a data extract and put that in your own CAD system or whatever if you're designing or planning a piece of work. And the final thing that we're working with the National Underground Asset Register in the United Kingdom about is if I am my own personal house and I'm the property owner and I want to know where my where the service connection is for my water or whatever, can I log into the system? So we're looking at how an individual could do that and for their own property. So I will stop sharing that now. And are there any final questions before I run away?
Yes, thanks, Denise. That's been fantastic to see that that system live and the X-ray snaps you can do basically of under the ground. There are a couple other questions. Where it's not an API from the provider, so from those utilities, how often, it might vary, but how often do the updates come through?
Well, we are very much in the early stages of working with the utilities to upload their data. It would be fair to say we did a piece of research with the University of Canterbury to look at how prepared are utilities and their GIS teams and their asset management records teams for moving to a digital record system. Some are more advanced than others. So we are just practically working with each utility and we'll take whatever they can give us, and we will do that on a rotation basis that works for their organisation. So we're recognising that there is no one standard at the moment and there's no one size fits all solution across utilities. We will work around their needs. So no, there is no specific time period other than to say the National Code of Practice does say that an asset record is meant to be updated within 3 months of when works completion and the car is closed. But that does not currently happen.
So I guess that answers the, there was another question about what did you mean by a mirror rather than the source of truth? And I guess it's because it's kind of the best collection of all those utilities data that you have at the time, and it's not necessarily to the date, up to date, and those utilities as the owner of the data are really the source of truth, right?
Well, yes and no. So
okay.
The utility is the owner of their own asset records in whatever system that they have. We will take that information and share it in one platform and use a series of tools to make sure that what you're seeing is able to be representative in one GIS on an open source platform. Utilities are meant to update their asset records in a timely fashion. Some do that really well and some have a longer way to go on that journey. So we will work with each of them, and that's this project is not a technology project. Technology is an important part of it, but ultimately it is a sector change program.
Fantastic. And just quickly, a yes or no answer, I think. Can you, so in that observation note that you demoed, could you flag up a hazard like asbestos?
Absolutely. So that could be contaminated land. It could be a site of significance to Māori. It could be tree roots. It could be anything. And we will add that as contextual layers in the future, just not at the moment.
Fantastic. And I'm conscious you were probably looking to run away. Have you got time to answer? Is there a connection between this and National ForwardWorks viewer that's been proposed?
So Wellington signed up to ForwardWorks Viewer at the beginning of 2020, and I rolled it out in Wellington. The ForwardWorks Viewer is run by Digital Built Aotearoa Foundation using open source software. We are partnering with Digital Built Aotearoa Foundation to build this tool. So ideally in the future, what you would have is one login, and if you needed to see both ForwardWorks Viewer and the Underground Asset Register, you would be able to view both. So the benefit of that is you could see what major projects were coming up and where assets were.
Amazing. Okay, thanks, Denise. We'll let you go away. There are weren't able to get to, but we will just we'll get those. I'll email those through to you and then share some answers when you are able to pen some responses.
Yeah, so I'd just say anyone who wants to know more, feel free to reach out and we're happy to meet with you or discuss the journey and so forth. So very happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Denise.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Bear with me a minute. So next up, and the final item on the agenda for today, for this last half hour, we have Nick Stillwell, who is on the line. I don't have to pull him in from another meeting, demoing our cadastral survey data viewer, which is being developed as part of the Modernising Landonline program and is about to go out to industry consultation. Nick, can you switch on a camera and a mic?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can see you and hear you.
Excellent. Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Ben. I don't think I'll use the entire allotted time unless you have lots of questions. So maybe start making some notes on things you'd like to ask while I'm speaking, and hopefully you can get some value out of me that way. Today, I'm going to take you through a concept that we've been, I guess, pursuing, and the goal of it is to get there are two drivers for it. So at the moment, there's a survey plan, and when a surveyor prepares a survey plan, as part of that, there's like an image as the output. And I'm just working frantically in the background to pull up an example. Sorry, so I won't be too far away. Is it going to do it? It's going on the wrong screen. I'll just do it on this one. Bear with me. Share screen. Excellent. Okay, hopefully people can see a screen with a bunch of plans on it for now.
Yep.
Cool. So these are some of the various incarnations of what survey plans have looked like over the sort of approximately 250 years. So we've got the pre-1972 imperial plans in the top left. We've got the black and white kind of series of plans that went from 2002, 72 to roughly the early 2000s. And then in the top right-hand corner, we've got the ones that are produced in Landonline. And so what we're looking at doing is the concept of moving from a static printed image like this to support a cadastral survey to a digitally interactive viewer. So I will try pull up my next screen. Excellent. Okay, so I'll give you a sneak peek of the viewer, and then I'll get back to the drivers and that sort of stuff later, just because it makes more sense that way. So the idea is that we have a public-facing application. People can have a cadastral survey data set or a survey plan on their computer, and they can drag and drop a survey plan into this viewer, and it renders it after they accept the disclaimer about it being a pilot product for consultation purposes. So the idea is that you drag and drop this file, and then this tool renders the data that describes the cadastral survey. So for anyone who's remotely familiar with a cadastral survey, there are kind of two main views people are used to. We have what's called the survey plan or record of survey that contains all the measurements in addition to the boundaries, as well as the boundary measurements. So it could be, a measurement from a trig station into a boundary or something like that. And then there's a title plan, which is a stripped back version that only contains information that's needed to support the title system. And this product is kind of much more intended for the broader audience, whereas the earlier one is intended for kind of more a survey audience. And now we're in a digitally interactive viewer. So this is, you can zoom in and out, and additional information turns on as you pan around. The kind of labels move to line up with what you're looking at the moment. And then In terms of what we've got on the app, there are a few other kind of key features. There's quite a lot of structured or tabular information that's accessible from these panels over here. So if I open up this one here, I can see, the kind of information about the survey, the underlying surveys that the surveyor used while they're preparing this survey, all the marks in the survey. Then I've got the ability to interact between the panel and the map. So I can click in the map and they highlight here, or vice versa. I can search for things in here. So say I wanted to find all the pegs, I could then pick them and highlight them all, and they all highlight in the map. So there are some pretty cool interactions between the tabular information and the spatial view. We've got vectors, which works much like the marks panel, except it's the bearings and distances rather than the points at each end of the vectors. And then we've got the underlying parcels, the parcels that were subdivided by this survey. So in this case, you can sort of see that they're creating 9 lots, and there were originally 2 lots. So you can choose this. Yeah, so I'm not saying it very well, but hopefully the picture paints 1,000 words. You can sort of see the extent of the underlying parcels as well as the new parcels that have been created to replace them. We've got all the new parcels in the survey, so you can click through them one by one and see them spatially. You can also, again, pick them from the map and see them in the panel and vice versa. And then the final kind of key part of all this is the supporting documents panel, and this is any kind of images that support the information in the survey. So in this example, I get a TIFF image that shows that it's proposed that there will be a series of rights of way over lot 5 in favour of lots 4 and 8, and over lot 6 in favour of lots 4, 5, 7 and 8. So we could look at that and go, oh, I need to find lot 5. Go, oh, okay, area A is over lot 5. It's got these rights associated with it, and it's in favour of lots 4 and 8. So these 2 lots here are going to get the ability to access that easement. Other features that are sitting inside this tool are you can print an area. So I could choose an area and say I wanted a blown up version of that one to transport as a PDF for whatever reason, and it will spit that out in a PDF version. And then there is also a tabular data export. So if I just click this button, it will generate a big PDF document listing out all of the tabular information in case that's useful for someone. So I've rattled through that reasonably quickly just to give you enough of a context of what this is all about. Now, the drivers behind why we're doing this, there's a couple of them. One is we've got quite a lot of complaints, or I guess frustration out there about the usability of those current plans that we prepare in Landonline, these ones here. There's kind of been a fair bit of frustration about how usable they are for quite a few years. And then another big part of it is really, I guess, productivity. You can spend a lot of time preparing these plan images. And so will hopefully, if the concept gets support and goes ahead and gets implemented, we'll be able to save all that time people spend currently drafting plans. And in addition to that, there's kind of like a technical workflow issue in Landonline where surveyors upload a land XML into the system, and each time they do that, if they've done any drafting, the kind of data gets blown away and they lose their drafting work. So there's quite a lot of rework associated with that. So 2 drivers, one's productivity and one is actually just to create a more usable plan product for everyone. Then the other kind of key feature that I think is worth demonstrating a little bit is actually kind of how these things are portable and shareable. So at the moment, these products are image-based. So people have built their workflows up around grabbing a copy of the image, emailing it to someone. Yeah, I'd say that's the main one. I guess technically you could post it too, but I'm not aware of too much of that happening. So yeah, I'll demonstrate some of the portability features. So at the moment, the prototype has been developed for consultation purposes. so it's not really like an official tool or anything like that yet. But as part of that consultation, to enable the discussion about the value of this concept to proceed with industry, we've given surveys the ability to generate that data package I showed you before for any of their real world scenarios. So this is the Landonline survey capture system. This is where surveyors kind of complete their survey capture before drafting up plans and submitting to LINZ. And inside there, when we go out to consultation, we'll have this button here that they can choose, and then they can go compile packages. And what this is doing is creating a snapshot of the survey, the data in the survey at a point in time. And it's creating two bundles of data. One is the entire survey, and that's called the CSD, short for Cadastral Survey Dataset. And then the other bundle is the title component. So that's a cut back product that excludes all the survey information that a lot of people don't like the extra noise. So you can see that has now generated these two packages. And so as a surveyor, I would get the ability to either download this package to my computer, at which point I will be able to, that's kind of a zip file, I could drag and drop that into this tool. Or I could email that zip file to my client or to the solicitor I'm working with on this project, or whoever else needs a copy, and I could explain to them that they could open that tool and open that package at this publicly open web page. In the future, we hope to get link sharing working kind of for all users, but for now, what we've got is users can share a link, but the links only work if the person is already a Landonline user. So the person would need to have a login for this to work, but I could go copy link, pretend I've sent this to my solicitor who's working on the project. I could send them that link and it will open this up for them and they can view it there without having to deal with the package. So yeah, that's a bit of a rundown of, I guess, the transportability features of the product. In terms of context, so we're hoping to launch the engagement with industry next week on this. So yeah, basically our plan for the engagement is to essentially launch a whole bunch of material on our website explaining how to use all these tools, encourage people to test them out, hopefully with some real world scenarios so they can get their head around it. And then, yeah, we're hoping to get feedback on how valuable the concept is, what the issues are, what the challenges are, where it's going to work better, where it's not going to work as well. So that, yeah, I guess that any future development can be aligned to meet people's needs. Yeah, is there anything else I need to cover off? I think that's enough for now. Shall we move to questions, Ben, or have you got any questions?
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat. Before I get to those, I spotted Christine Tarrant had a hand up earlier, but is there a question still there, Christine, or?
Sorry, that was an accident.
Okay. Otherwise, you might have been trying to hit the reaction button. There were a lot of reactions throughout, with mind blown emojis and all sorts of things. What technology, first question from Sam, what technology is being used in the background for this tool?
That's a hard question. I'm technical as a surveyor, not technical as a developer, but the stuff I know of is the map is kind of open layers driven. There's a lot of React stuff in there. So hopefully that's enough to answer your question about the limit of my knowledge.
We'll bring along a dev next time to help answer those techie questions.
Great idea.
Yeah, I assume, so the next question from Alice, I assume this works only for more recent Landonline plans and not the older plan sheets?
Yeah, so the concept underlying all this is that there will only ever be one official view of each survey. So it will be, from a point in time, if this concept gets officially implemented and this thing becomes the official replacement of the survey plan, the survey plans that use this technology will be viewed that way, whereas all the plans that are were created as images, the official thing will still be the image. So I could have just said yes to your question, but there's a long way of saying yes.
It's always good to have a bit of an explanation. Can you get easements as a separate layer for use in other GIS environments?
That's an interesting question. So I guess the context for this is that it's a very kind of regulated specific product, the survey plan. Like it's the Cadastral Survey Act requires these things to be prepared, and licensed cadastral surveyors can prepare them. The Surveyor General sets the standard for all the data that's required to be contained within the cadastral survey data set. But in saying that, I guess there are a few parts to it. So one is data that's coming into this product is also going into Landonline. And so then if it becomes approved or deposited, it will flow out through LINZ data service in the appropriate layers. Now, easements is slightly tricky. So I guess the non-primary parcels will definitely flow through. There will also be easements kind of recorded as memorials on titles, but then there's a bit of a complicated process of trying to marry those up. So it's a little bit of some of these things are kind of possible, but it's quite complicated. Kind of an answer. Longer term, we are hoping that at the moment, the zip file that drives this whole process is kind of like a custom LINZ JSON file format. But we've also been doing a bunch of work with the Australasian jurisdictions on trying to come up with a standardized data exchange format. And so we're hoping to evolve the current JSON that sits in that zip file to align with a standard. That will mean there'll be a standard way of kind of consuming this information or moving this information from private sector into government or from government back out to private sector. So that might create some opportunities longer term for having kind of standard ways of extracting some easement information out of these files. Yeah.
And that mention of JSON and working with the Australians segs to another question around support for 3D and heights.
Okay, so for now, these tools are kind of based on the Landonline environment, and so Landonline currently really only has structured data for 2D, particularly in terms of parcels, and so yeah, there's no immediate plan to implement this as a 3D tool, but I guess strategically LINZ has kind of indicated that we're keen to pursue 3D cadastre and things like that longer term, but it certainly wouldn't be implemented in the first phase of rolling something like this out. In terms of heights, the only kind of real heights that would be coming through on this tool for now would be if the user added them as an annotation to a mark. So that's probably not really what you had anticipated with the question there, Sam, but that's where things are at the moment.
Yep. Would subdivisions that have been lodged but not yet had titles issued be visible?
So I guess the context for this thing is this is the package of data that describes a subdivision. So so that example I showed before where I'm in here, this is a subdivision that has not yet been lodged and will not. I'm sorry, I'm just rereading your question. Would subdivisions that have been lodged but not had titles issued be visible? So the tool would make that possible. So certainly when we get to an implementation phase of this, that the idea would work just like the current plans where you can jump in and you can buy a copy of an approved survey plan and download that, and that will show all the information of the proposed survey even though the titles haven't issued. So it would work just like that, except instead of downloading an image, you'd download a zip file and you could open that zip file on this tool to view it. So no real change in that context. I see there's a separate Q&A thread as well. Are we using that?
There might be a couple of questions in there. Oh, yeah, there are a couple of questions through that thread too. So, can this be layered with LiDAR layers or other lens layers to visualize elevation?
So I guess the answer is not at the moment. So in terms of the focus for this tool, it's really just trying to replace the core information needed to subdivide land. So it's not intended to be like a generic data viewer or a GIS platform. It's really intended to give people a consistent way of viewing a cadastral survey data set. So I guess we're open to the idea of people providing feedback on helpful contextual information that will make that task a lot easier. But for the time being, the focus will very much be on supporting the kind of core use cases to preparing and approving a cadastral survey data set, and then how that flows into the titles process for issuing new titles.
And will conservation covenants and Kiri 2 covenants be shown as well through this, or can they be seen through this?
I'm a little bit rusty. So if those things currently get a non-primary parcel created as part of a cadastral survey data set, then they would be visible in this tool. And so yeah, you'd essentially, anything that where a non-primary parcel gets created, it will be visible. So here's an example of a non-primary parcel, obviously not a conservation covenant or QE2 covenant. But yeah, so as long as a non-primary parcel gets created, it would be visible in this tool. And then depending on the type of non-primary parcel, you'll have different information. So in this parcels panel here, you can see these ones are all intended to be fee simple title. You can see this one here is intended to be road. And you can see that these ones here are intended to be easements. So my pick is that conservation covenants or QE2 covenants might have their own parcel intent here, but can't quite remember the exact answer to that. So, but yeah, definitely non-primary parcels will be shown, and depending on the type of non-primary parcel, the intent will be different, and there might be supporting documents that reference those parcels too.
Cool. You mentioned notes earlier about heights, but surveyors put other kinds of notes on their plans. Does this mean that we're going to be LINZ or Landonline is going to be capturing more information relating to plans that wouldn't otherwise be captured today?
Yeah, so at this stage, this tool we've just done like a bare minimum to enable communication of the concept of how this could all work. But as part of the consultation on that, we're making it really clear that the long-term viewers, if we go down this route, that that will be necessary to view all the key information in a cadastral survey data set. And so examples of that will need to be added are parcel annotations, kind of vesting notes saying, this parcel will vest in the territorial authority on deposit, or could be that the parcel is subject to Part 4A of the Conservation Act. There could be annotations on water boundaries or irregular boundaries. There's an example. So that, yeah, I guess the key thing is that anything that's not currently captured as structured data and gets recorded on the plan, we're going to need to find a way of making it possible for people to record that information in structured data, so that there will definitely be more data. Although my one comment would be the nature of that data is that it's very technical, and I'm not sure how much broad interest there would be in that information.
Great. Well, I think we've just got the 5-minute reminder, and we might look to wrap up in that case. There's no more questions going through the chat, but people can reach you, Nick, if they've got a question. Nick.Stillwell@LINZ. We can pop that in the chat.
Fortunately, that's not my email address, but I'm sure anyone's capable of figuring it out. But yeah, I guess if you have any questions, I'd just encourage you to contact engagement@linz.gov.nz, which is just means if I'm not there to pick it up, it'll get passed to someone who can. yeah, really keen to talk to people who are interested in this, so do get in touch.
Yeah, that'll be in the slide pack, and I'll just pop that engagement at LINZ email in the chat as well. To reach out to Nick about that, or well, the team about that, or any of the other presentations today as well. That's a fallback. There was, of course, that properties email earlier on in the piece as well for the property data squad. Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. I think you've made a big impression on the audience today, judging by the reactions and the interest.
Thanks, everyone.
Or the tool has.
More realistic. I like it.
Yeah. Awesome. I will just pull back up my PowerPoint. Well, and that's just to say, yeah, just to wrap up. Yeah, thank you everyone for making it today. And thanks for your questions and your engagement, really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who presented today. There's a couple, that engagement at LINZ email is there again, and my email as well for any questions. The session, as I said earlier, has been recorded, so we'll share that in shortly as well. And yes, next month we will be reaching out to you again with another webinar being lined up for early September at this point, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you everyone again, and have a great day.
Nice work, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Ben.
Many thanks,
Cheers.
Ben, and thanks, Emma, for joining us too.